That's right.
We like to talk about this subject today. So welcome everyone to episode 22 of Baseline Tech Talk Tuesday. And if you're watching this for the first time, please go to YouTube and watch previous episodes, as well as any other how-to helpful content that Dan's been creating recently. The Baseline YouTube channel is Baseline Web Training, all one word on YouTube. If you can find it, which you will, bookmark it, then you'll always have it either on your phone or your computer for easy access. And the subject or the topic for today is Baseline 2-wire and the sort of fundamental differences that it provides in market and the value and opportunity that everybody has here today to use it if they want to its fullest ability. And we're talking about this for a couple different reasons. Number one, because this is a highly searched for keyword phrase on YouTube on some of our other videos. So we want to add to that sequence, as well as we want to just remind everyone here of the differences and how you can use the knowledge that we're going to talk about today to help troubleshoot as well. Because sometimes understanding the basics can help you understand when things don't work quite right and how to solve them and troubleshoot them faster. So with that, let's do quick introductions. I'm Andy Humphrey, Irrigation Technology Consultant for Baseline. We have Chris Wright, VP of Sales, and we have Dan Conger, our Training Manager.
Awesome.
And with that, let's kick it off, guys.
All right. Cool. Well, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about conventional wire and what you can do with conventional wire. So we don't want to ignore that, but today we wanted to focus, as you mentioned, about 2-wire. And specifically what's unique about Baseline 2-wire. And just to get some of the basics out of the way, about 2-wire, it's cheaper to install, right? It's a lower cost. It's as far as materials and installation, it's really easy to expand. I think we've been around the industry enough that we're aware of some of those simple things, but it's when it gets to what I think is the most important thing is that Baseline 2-wire is just smarter than conventional wire, and there's a lot of advantage of it over others in the market.
Yeah, and I think that 2-wire is becoming more and more the standard in the industry. Right. More systems at different price points are becoming 2-wire systems versus conventional wire, and it's important to identify the different engineering traits of 2-wire technologies to identify what truly is easy in the market.
Absolutely. Because if you remember, what is Baseline? A technology company.
Yeah.
Are we a marketing company? Nope. Far from it. Other than what we are right here. This is Baseline Marketing right here.
3 guys on
Baseline's a tech company.
Yeah.
So that's what we have. That's what we make, is what we invent, is what we produce.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So I think it's important to first identify what is the foundation of the 2-wire technology that Baseline utilizes and why that sets us apart, makes us different in the industry, and gives us the power that we have when operating a small to large irrigation system.
Yeah. Should we, you want to read some of the underhood techie stuff, Chris?
All right. So if you were to refer to, the patent language around Baseline's 2-wire technology, it mentions that a single pair of wires together with communication and networking protocols are required for operational control of remote devices. And on top of that, not only are we operating them, but we're also gathering data from them so that we can use them to make better irrigation decisions. So that is essentially the foundation of the patent language behind Baseline's 2-wire.
Right. Yep. And yeah, so that is my number one on my list, was that the patented, 2-way digital communication that comes from our patent technology. And
That's right.
That's enormously, everything else falls from that we can do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
When you say 2-way digital communication, you might wonder, what does that mean exactly? And then when I hear Chris read the patent language, what that means is two-way digital communication for data gathering purposes, right? That's the reason that there's two ways: to collect the data from the field, bring it to the controller, which leads into a feature capability that everybody loves about Baseline, which is probably the number one, which is made possible because of that data gathering capability, which is search and assign, right? So that was kind of this morning. It was like, oh, boom, what does search mean? Data gathering.
Wow. You're jumping into number two, that search and assign at the controller and base manager, but I'm realizing how these are all interconnected, right? We can't separate that because data might be pressure data that we're gathering. It might be, zone data. It might be soil moisture sensor data. But to your point, getting the serial number, right? Because we've got this serial number on the decoder that we're bringing back in to populate it. That's data that we're collecting.
Absolutely is. Yep.
And that's the patented technology right there.
That's right. And it's unique in market because you can simply do a search function once your devices are connected to the wire path, collect that data, bring it back into the controller, and then assign it to be associated with whatever function you want it to be associated with in the controller, whether it be a control point, whether it be a zone, whether it be a moisture sensor, like you said. Any of that data is coming from those devices connected to the wire path, and it's searchable without having to do any pre-programming ahead of time.
Yep. And what's kind of cool is if that device is not connected to the two wire, when we go out to collect the data, we can't collect it because it's not attached to the two wire. So that's kind of, when you think about search and assign, then you go back to the patent language of data collection, those two things just kind of come together. And to me, when Chris and I first sort of stumbled upon the patent language not so long ago, everything started to become much more clear about why we have what we have and what it does and why that's important.
Yeah. And with that search and assign capability, how much easier can it get when you are configuring your controller or doing any kind of programming for your system to operate?
Yep.
I've had people ask, how do I pre-program this, and how do I need a sticker to put on here to know that this is zone 23. It's like, that's not the way this is. You can do that if you really want to, but why go through those extra steps? And let's install them and then search and assign, bring that data in, do it after the fact once they're in the ground, and to make sure that it's connected. Because if it doesn't show up on that list, it's not connected.
Right. Yeah. Even if you numbered it in advance and installed it, you would still want to press search to verify that it's there so you can collect it in. So I installed 62 of them. I have 62 of them. Perfect.
Right. Yeah. It makes me think that, we've been doing this for 20 years. That patent language is 20 years old, right? And it's interesting to hear Dan say that when he's in training exercises, people are like, well, how do I connect this to the controller and program it to be associated with a zone? And as two-wire becomes more established in the industry with contractors, it's interesting to hear how they're being modeled based on, whatever manufacturer they happen to be using, and the expectation that that's the way it works across all brands or all manufacturers. And that's just not the case.
Right. It has to be for competition because there's a patent. Somebody has a patent on this, and it happens to be Baseline.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And the other one that I've heard come up in trainings is about a programmer, a field programmer, a device that they could bring out to the box to reprogram it. Again, that's at the controller, or you could do that through Base Manager, App Manager as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Search and assign. That is probably the number one differentiating features of Baseline's two-wire and the simplicity of that.
Awesome. Well, so the number 3 one that I have on my list is real-time system data. So that collecting that data, but not calculated, not retrieving it once and then figuring out. It's happening on real time on a recurring basis as your system is operating. Lots of benefits that I think are worth digging into and scenarios where they'd be really valuable.
Yeah, I think so too, because it's interesting that you don't really think about the frequency of collection until you at one point want that information, right? Until you're maybe using a sensor. Let's use a moisture sensor. And if you want to turn that system off immediately at upper threshold, you need to be taking frequent readings all the time. So you have that data in real time. Otherwise, if there's even a 10-minute interval or a 5-minute interval or it's not as accurate as it could be. And that's part of the reason why connecting it with a physical wire is advantageous, because the amount of power it would take something wirelessly to be transmitting all the time, like 24/7, is a lot more difficult than it is if it's physically connected to that 2-wire path where we're pulling that information at such a high frequency that it becomes really usable information.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just had an interesting thought. So if I could see a world where sampling a moisture sensor every hour wouldn't be such a horrible thing. There's lots of scenarios where it could be bad, but by sampling it very frequently and making it real time, we have so many more flexible scenarios that we could use. So, we've talked about how you can use a soil moisture sensor or a pressure sensor or anything in lots of different configurations, whether it's a cistern or it's an emergency stop, all these different things. And that real time allows that flexibility, not just limited to it won't water today and checked last night.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a nice complement to that real time data is our ability to start, stop, and pause conditions, right? So we know when to start when we've reached a condition. We know when to stop when we've reached a condition, or pause in real time. So it's very dynamic. It's very reactive. And it really enhances the performance of the irrigation system by being able to do that in the process or on the fly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. When it comes to automation, if you just want to collect information for the sake of looking at it tomorrow to see what happened yesterday, that's different. But to provide true automation, you need that data and you need that frequency of collection to be as fast as possible. And that's why I think there is a difference between putting a data collector out there that is collecting real-time data, but maybe only transmitting it back to the mothership every couple of hours. Well, for automation purposes, that wouldn't be good enough.
Right. Yep. So we've established that we're two-way communication for gathering purposes, data gathering purposes. We've got real-time data and for automation. Right.
Yes, that's the key. And that's what we forget to talk about sometimes is the purpose is to automate it. Even if you're collecting data at first to learn how something works and get comfortable, the goal is to provide automation.
That's right. Yep. Not data log it and then make programming changes, but allow the sensor to adjust accordingly based on parameters that you have already programmed in there so that it is automated.
Yep. With smart watering algorithms. Absolutely.
Right.
Nice. The other one last thought on that one is that Chris, when you mentioned the start, stop, pause, that wouldn't really make sense if it wasn't real time data. So there's that building, the platform that we keep building upon. You've got this foundational, and we can do all these other things at different levels with it.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. If I think of a use case, right, you mentioned, using a sensor as a level indicator in a pond or a cistern. Having been on a site a couple of months ago with Jim White from Pacific Sports Turf Management, they're using a sensor as a level control in a big water feature at the entrance to a corporate campus. And the thresholds on that sensor are 2 tenths apart between start and stop. And so being able to have the sensitivity for one, and then the ability to respond to that tight threshold within that time frame, it requires real-time data, right? And it works flawlessly.
Yep. And you can stack that with 200 zones on the system and, gobs of other devices, and it's doing it all of it in real time.
Very cool. Cool. Okay, that was number 3. The fourth one that I've got on my list was the bicoders, or all of our sensors have LEDs on them to help with diagnostics and troubleshooting. So I'm going to switch over my camera so I can show you some of those. Oh, I don't want to show you the floor of my office or my
Or
arm.
your arm. There you go.
Okay, so I've got 2 different bicoders here. So the first one is a 2-zone bicoder. And the 2 things I wanted to point out on this one is we can see, oh, there we go. There, they light up nice, right? You can see there are 2 LEDs on the solenoid side, but there's only 1 solenoid on the 2-wire side.
One LED on the 2-wire side.
What did I said something wrong? Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the correction. Okay. So this LED on the 2-wire side would tell us information about the 2-wire path, while these 2 on the solenoid side could tell us information about the solenoid. So great information that's just going to, and what's kind of cool is it's very, very visual. And in my training situations, I describe a scenario where you could even have somebody that's very, very unskilled, that doesn't know how to use tools, that could run just a simple blink test and find out some basic communication information from a zone level.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's so basic.
What are some of the specifics of that information? What are we able to find out?
Well,
what's significant about the LED on the 2-wire side?
Well, so if this guy's not blinking, it's not connected. So this is verifying that this is connected to the 2-wire path, and it has communication, right? So that's a visual indication of that representation. You could get the same information from a test and look at the test interface, but this is a visual field test that anybody could do.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And taking support calls from the field. This is a question that I often remind or ask the person I'm working with. Can you tell me the status of the lights? And it's amazing how many times someone makes a phone call prior to doing what does seem so basic, because it's easily forgotten. It's just to verify, is that light blinking? Is the solenoid, the light on the valve side of it, is it? If it's solid, hey, we've got power all the way to the solenoid. Let's troubleshoot from that point down. And like I said, we get a lot of calls where something very basic like this, can be troubleshot right in the field.
Yeah, and the natural tendency is, if you've got a decoder in line, it's wired up, it's got connections on it, and you're lit up and the valve's not operating, the immediate assumption is that, there's something wrong with this decoder, right?
This is going to tell you you're wrong.
Yeah.
Don't waste your effort.
It very, very well can help you to prioritize where you look for the problem, like Andy said, right? So that you're not undoing, connections. You're not having the time spent and bringing it out of the field, either bringing it back to the controller or to the distributor's counter, right? We provide those LEDs so that you have indicators as to whether or not you've got a viable wire path.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And on this pressure transducer, again, we've got one for the 2-wire side and a single one for the transducer side. Now, this only has a single light because there's only a single output, whereas this one has 2 outputs, so it has 2 devices. If I had a 4-zone bicoder, of course, there would be 4 LEDs on this side of the device.
Yep. And then keep in mind the 2-wire LED, if there's power on the 2-wire cable anywhere on the system, all LED lights on every device will blink. Can't recall the interval, but it's like once every 5 seconds or so, 8 seconds, something like that.
Yeah, you can change the interval too.
That is your way to verify there's power on that 2-wire cable.
Nice.
Absolutely. So if you've got a decoder, let's say we've got a flow sensor decoder or a precip sensor decoder, and it's wired up, and you've got illumination of the LED on the 2-wire side, but your sensor side doesn't seem to be working. How can you validate if the sensor side of the decoder is okay with the flow sensor or the precip sensor.
So I may have a response. I don't know if this is the exact response, but you can
read my mind, Andy.
tap the wires together like this.
Exactly.
And it should make the lights blink.
Exactly. Yep. You can do the tap test. And if the tap test shows that that light is blinking, then you know that the decoder is viable and you've got an issue either with the flow sensor itself or the precip sensor for that matter.
So to that point, this pressure transducer kit comes pre-assembled like this. This is potted in, but
Right.
on a flow bicoder, there's two wires that are output, and you're going to do your own connections. So you need to examine those connections, just like you would. You might want to examine the connections on a zone bicoder or a master valve bicoder.
Yeah, and the tap test does not work on the valve bicoder. There's no tap test.
No.
It's either open, closed, shorted, etc.
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask I know that I'm gonna make an obvious statement. When we look at soil moisture sensors, there are no LEDs. I wonder why.
Well, because it's generally buried.
Wouldn't it be easier if you put it in a valve box? You'd be able to find it so much better if it was in a valve box.
Yeah.
What? Find the sensor in a valve box?
I get that question, by the way.
Yeah, you don't want to do that either.
What they're saying.
Nice.
Yeah, if you put a moisture sensor in a valve box, then it's not going to be seeing the soil moisture sensor in the landscape.
Right? Well, it'll tell you if your valve box is wet.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's true. We should sell valve box sensors. Great point, Dan.
See if your valve box is full of water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, number 5 on my list is the ability to combine 2-wire and conventional wire on the same controller. So we've talked about conventional wire, and we're talking 2-wire today. So that's all about the powered bicoder. So conventional wire is how we address conventional wire. So here we've got 24 zones of conventional, but most importantly, right, is I've got this 2-wire terminal here, and I can connect a 2-wire path on. So we've got 24 zones. We can pick up the remaining zones, up to 200 zones, on this with this our powered bicoder, if you will.
Yep. And keep in mind that entire device there is a 2-wire device. Every part of that is a 2-wire device. Just happens to be that it is compatible with conventional wires because of the way that it's powered. But that board is still a searchable and assignable device.
Right. This is really a 24 zone bicoder that happens to reside in the controller. So it's absolutely right. It is a 2-wire device.
Yep.
So
and if that board fails, you will get the same, 2-wire no response potentially when that board fails, because that's what it is. It's a 2-wire device.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yep. Exactly. And it gives you the ability to have 2-wire run off of it as well. And we've gone over that before, but it's always good to reiterate, right? So we can accommodate 24 zones of conventional wire on that, but we can also accommodate 2-wire devices on it on a 2-wire path by having 2-wire attached to the black and red terminal posts there that you see, so that you can tie in a flow sensor decoder or tie in a additional moisture sensors, if you will, or precip sensors and things like that.
Because we're just looking to communicate to those devices. So we may say it's a 2-wire terminal, but for some of those use cases, it may just be a communication terminal, communication cable connection.
So what you're saying is, if I had a flow sensor, I could run a 2-wire path from that to a flow sensor or any other device. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then because that is a 2-wire device and it's searchable, it's also assignable. So just as a reminder, every one of those screw terminals can be reassigned to any station number that might make sense based on how that system's being laid out. So you might have zone 1 on your 2-wire path if it's hybrid, and zone 2 could be on your terminal board.
I got to admit, that was a bit of a mind blown thing when I realized that terminal 5 doesn't have to be zone 5. This could be zone 200, and that could be zone 1. And
Was that your mind blowing?
It was again. Absolutely.
I just wanted to make sure that it was your mind blowing and not something else.
Good. And now that we know, we're going to pull that sound bite out. Keep it.
That's right.
Nice.
So a question came in regarding powered bicoders, stating that one can reside in the control or in the controller connected to the control board, and then others can be placed out in the field away from the controller, right? So explain a little bit about how that works, the powered bicoder, the substation configuration methodology.
Okay, so a powered bicoder, it's really common for people to use a substation with a powered bicoder. There's other ways to do it, but the most common way is to pick up that conventional wire. So then it would, conventional wire would come in, and then it would most likely substation wirelessly transmits.
Right. A substation by definition is a wireless device. Correct. Versus a powered bicoder is a two-wired or a wired, device.
So
exactly.
That's it's an extension of the base station of the 3200. Absolutely correct.
Yeah, and we talked about it in a previous episode where you can consolidate controllers on a site into fewer programmable networked interfaces, right? By using powered bicoders and substations to retrofit existing controllers, wire up the existing control wires, and have it communicate back to the 3200.
Yep. And you've got a rat's nest with 182 conventional wires. Get a hold of your RSM, and we can, provide a custom built cabinet with those conventional wired boards in it to meet that retrofit solution.
Yep. So lots of different options and flexibility associated with it. So hopefully everybody kind of got a sense as to, how is Baseline's two-wire different? And in ways, how is it easier to work with in the field, right? So that when you've got a project, you can do a site assessment, essentially, determine what kind of two-wire devices will be required, either to make it operate based on the design intent or retrofit it based on a desired outcome, so that gives you the performance that you would expect in managing the water. And depending on what your objective is in managing the water, it could be conservation objectives or just good water management objectives. So we give you all of the tools that you would need in order to do that and to automate the system so that it makes it less cumbersome and easier to interface with.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
All right. So didn't have many questions roll in today. Mr. Hodnet wanted to know if Dan could do a tap test, which for future reference, it would be cool to have the decoder actually connected to your controller.
I know, that's true.
I mean, if I were on that side of it, I would have that, but that's all right. Just kidding. We're at the bottom of the hour, so lots of info, good dialogue, good discussion about Baseline 2-wire today, and hopefully you learned something about it. So what do we have on tap for next week?
We're going to talk about water management. Actually, what was it? It was water management versus
water monitoring.
Water monitoring. Ooh, right. I almost forgot the phrases.
Yeah.
They're not the same?
That's,
not according to me.
Not at all.
We'll
give a very compelling reason as to why, and outline it and deep dive into the differences and what it means to actually manage the water and what it means to monitor it.
Yeah.
Right?
And one is not better than the other. There are just differences, and it's important to understand the differences and what the objectives are for both of them.
And not everybody can do both at the same time effectively.
Yep. And neither one of them necessarily means water conservation either. That's just another element to throw into monitoring or managing.
That's right. So
excellent.
Very good stuff. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today on Tech Talk Tuesday. We always appreciate your participation. If you know of anybody that can benefit from this, have them register to join us on a weekly basis. Same place, same time. And if you want to catch up on any episodes that you may have missed, or need a refresher, or just want to interface with our YouTube channel to make Andy, Dan, and I influencers on the internet, then by all means visit Baseline Web Training, and you can review all of the different recorded material that we have there. So we appreciate it. Have a good week. Go out, work hard, be safe, keep doing what you're doing. If you need anything in the process, let us know.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time, as always.
Cheers.
See you later.